Another tapestry technique I really like to use that is more of decorative and textural is the sumac stitch. So this is not integral for the construction of the piece, but it's something that you can add. So I'm gonna have a piece of yarn here, all right? And what you do is tuck your end just to the back of your piece. You don't have to weave this in, you just put it back there, and then you have your yarn. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna take 3 warps like this, and you wanna float over the 3 and then back under 1. So I'm gonna take my other end, go over all 3, and then I'm gonna go back under that farthest warp to the right. And I wanna kind of hold this one in place while I get this started. And then I push down. So this warp that I went back underneath and kind of made that loop swirl counts as the first one in the next 3 grouping. So 1, 2, 3. I'm gonna go over those. And then what happens is I'll go under that farthest to the right like this, pull it down, and then push it. Pack it into that weave structure. Something to keep in mind is you can go over 2 back 1. It will just be a shorter stitch, so you can play around with that, and you can make them loopier or tighter to the fabric. So again, this warp is the one that I twisted around, so I'm gonna do the 3 there, pull 2 back, and then go under that 3rd one, back towards the left side, pull down, and then I can continue on with that. I'll show you one of these stitches not going over 3, doing the 2 and 1. So say I only wanted to use 2 warps because I wanted a shorter sumac stitch. The stitch that was wrapped around that warp there, I would go over the 2, and then instead of over the 3, I'm only going over 2, and then I go back to that farthest one. I'll do that again, wrapped around that warp, lift up those 2, and then from the right side I go back to the left under 1, pull it through the center, pull down, and see, you can see the difference, how this is a little bit more dense, this is a little bit more spread out. It's completely up to you how you would want that to look. I'm actually going to remove this to show you something else that you could think about. So you also should have received some roving. And what roving is are fibers that have been aligned in one direction, and it's basically fibers before it's spun into a yarn. This is a wool roving. So remember, since we're using a wool warp and I have this wool roving, it's going to want to catch all the little fibers because it will want to felt together. So you just have to be a little bit careful. So what I'm going to do here is take a piece of yarn, about the same length as my roving, and I am going to do that sumac stitch again. So I'm going to push the end under here, all right? And I'm gonna do the longer stitch because the roving is a bit thick. So I'm gonna pull up those warps, float over the 3, and then pass my end backwards on that farthest warp. I'm gonna pull down, and then I want that yarn to show. So for my next stitch, I'm gonna go over 3 and then back under that farthest to the right, and I'm kind of holding it to manipulate where that yarn will twist. And this is just something to think about, how you can use the yarns in your kit and get a little bit more visual texture. So over the 3 and then back under the farthest to the right. The roving will want to separate, so you have to be really gentle when you're pulling on it. Over 3. Under that last one. One more stitch here. See how I can just manipulate that to make it look how I want it to, and then I'm going to take these ends and just place them under the weaving. And my next time I pass my weft, it will secure it. So I'm going to pull this up a little bit because I want the puffiness of this to be a little bit more consistent. There we go. I'm going to have it a little tighter on the edges, and it's a little puffier in the middle here. So that's another way you can think about the sumac.